I'm Valerie Gardner. VJO Gardner is my pen name. I write about dragons. I'm obsessed with dragons. And I even make little fabric dragons, little stuffies, and sell them. But I thought this would be a great place to discuss dragons in literature and in art and culture even. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Kaitlund, and then Charlie.
Hi, my name is Kaitlund Zupanic. I am a dragon fanatic. I've always loved dragons and creating them. They're my main drive to create, and they just are really important to me, and so that's why they feature so much in my art. It's been a while. Got to warm up for. Haven't done a convention for a past year, and I'm really, really excited to be with everybody today.
And hello, everybody. I'm Charlie Pulsipher. I am a young adult author. I write science fiction and fantasy that includes dinosaurs and dragons and everything in between. And I am also an artist. I create little cardboard miniatures out of boxboard, which is similar to what you find in cereal boxes. And I use boxboard and paper and create these tiny, tiny little things.
All right, awesome. So my first question is, what features are important when portraying a dragon? So who wants to start that off?
I can start off.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
For me, a dragon always has to have wings. That's probably the most fun thing for me to illustrate, because you can do a lot of things with wings. And of course, you gotta always have the serpentine tails and fire breathing usually. It's just a big part, along with magic. Dragons are very inherently magical creatures in my artwork and also in my writing that I'm working on. And so those are probably the most main things that speak to me as far as what a dragon is.
What about you, Charlie?
I also lean pretty European with my dragons. I do like wings and serpentine and claws and teeth and horns and spikes and all the things that we typically associate with a dragon. There are other options when it comes to dragons, but I do like wings and teeth and claw.
Yeah, I'm partial to the more European style dragon myself, you can tell. Also in my writing, I lean towards that. And my dragons each have their own distinct personality. And I have one that's got quite the sense of humor, and his favorite thing is to make the main character embarrassed, make him squirm, and then laugh at him telepathically. And nobody else knows there's a dragon laughing at him and he's trying to be serious. So yeah, kind of a warped sense of humor there. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I do definitely have a great love for Asian dragons, and they did definitely inspire me, and they were influential to me as far as dragons and spirituality for me, and finding them as not a force of evil, but a force of good, and something that can bring both destruction, but also regrowth, renewal, definitely a lot of different ties to nature for me with dragons. I kind of have a mix between, I guess, a European and a Asian style with dragons.
Yeah, my next question was going to be, what region do you draw your inspiration from? But I think we've kind of already addressed that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, and the Asian, no, you're fine. Yeah, the Asian dragons, there's very specific differences between the Chinese dragon and the Japanese dragon in the number of toes they have. And I think the Taiwanese have their own specific ideas of what the dragons are. And okay, so next, how do you show scale without distracting from the dragon, and is it important? I know with my writing, I'll talk about a character standing next to the dragon with the dragon's chin on the floor and having to put his hand up on the cheek of the dragon or something, or how large the eye is, or to give idea of scale, and of course, big enough to write on. What about you, Charlie?
I use scale in my writing and in my art. I have some examples here, of course. So this is one of my dragons, and so I use the clouds for scale.
Beautiful.
And then the scale of it itself kind of says something as well, that it's just this tiny mechanical creation that you can imagine
Right.
actually being this size and flying around the room. And then for this one, I did just simple scale. I did rocks at the base of his feet to give some perspective of his size. And then this is one that I'm working on right now that is super tiny. So there's actually a flower in there that will give you a scale for this dragon. So this dragon, when it's done, will literally be about 1.5 inches tall. So
I love that. That's beautiful.
That's cool.
Always stunning work, Charlie.
thank you.
What about you, Kaitlund?
I really like having my dragons look huge. I like big dragons that look definitely unnatural. You can definitely tell there's something magical about them. Usually I'll use, it's not been put in this one, but I'll usually use cities in the background. There'll be cities down here in the corner. I'll often add tiny birds and clouds, definitely like Charlie, using the atmosphere and the background to show the scale of the dragon and just make them look as large as possible, almost filling the sky. If it's a small dragon, I'll do things like Charlie also said with the flowers, butterflies, blades of grass, lots of fun things like that. Insects.
Ooh, a butterfly next to your dragon, that would be awesome.
Yes.
Where they're almost the same size, that'd be really
right?
cool.
It would be really wonderful. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just curious if there was any other inspirations behind your dragons, Charlie.
So the larger one that I showed was actually based off a character that I wrote in a book. So I built him off of that character, and then I did a steampunk velociraptor a little bit after that one, and I wanted to do a steampunk dragon as well. I've done a couple now. So the cloud skimmer that I have right here is just one example. I have another one that has 4 wings that I really love, but it was a piece that I sold, so I don't have it here to show you.
Oh no!
And and then I
had.
Go ahead.
I had to do a stuffed dragon for a lady in Australia that had dragonfly wings, so it had 4 wings. And yeah, it's in Australia now, but that was an interesting and fun endeavor to create that 3-dimensionally with fabric.
Yeah. And often I'm building mine to fit a container. So I buy the container first, and then I'm building it to fit inside the container. So you have like a little terrarium piece with the dragon inside. And so the one with 4 wings, I built it to fit the container, and it didn't fill it as much as I wanted it to. And so I added the extra wings to give it more, so it would fill the container, but also it just ended up looking cooler and better when I was done with it.
Cool.
Oh, I bet.
Oh, this one shows scale actually a little bit better. You might be able to see that, but there is a butterfly in with this one, along with other flowers and like blades of grass, where you can kind of get a little bit better of an sense of scale. Like this definitely isn't a large dragon. It's you, but you want to use the environment around your dragon to set the scale.
Right. Okay. How do you reveal the personality, and does it have one? I mean, I've seen some art where the dragon is just a dragon and just doesn't seem to have any kind of intelligence behind it. And I like the idea that the dragon has intelligence and that there's something going on in its brain, So what kind of techniques or what do you use to show that personality, make that shine through in your art or your writings?
Oh, I was looking for Kaitlund to jump in.
Oh,
because
I don't want to start off every time.
But you do it so well. I can see the personality in the two behind you, like really well. Like one is curled up almost like a puppy, and then the other one is overviewing the landscape, and they both have personality. They both have a lot of stuff going on.
I'm very glad that it reads. All of my dragons definitely that they're not just a mindless beast. They are a sentient creature that is capable of everything that we're capable of. The good and the bad, obviously. But that is one thing that I strive to drive home in my dragons and my work, is to create that connection, that it's a creature that is thinking, that has wants and needs, gets angry or upset. And I really try to push that, especially with the eyes. The eyes is the window into the soul. And that's one of the main things that makes my dragons come alive, basically. I'm trying to think if there's
What about you,
else.
Charlie?
With me, it's a lot more difficult to infuse personality into these creations because they're very architectural in a way, and the eyes on these things are so tiny, and they're usually just little bits of cardboard glued on. And so I try to convey personality a little bit with just the facial expressions, with the flow, the movement of their bodies, and things like that. But often I'm just trying to wow people with the intricacies and how small they are.
It definitely works. Absolutely. Right. They're very, very gorgeous. Absolutely love them.
They are. I know with my dragons in my books, they're as much a character as any of the human characters are. And they have distinct personalities, and I use the telepathy with them, so they can be speaking to the different characters and stuff. And I have one scene where the one main character has just buried his father, and he's going to walk home, and the dragon's like, "No, you're getting on me," just with his nose, pushes him around to his shoulders so that he can mount. And at that point, he's more grandfatherly than this warped personality that comes out later. But I think it's important that they do have some personality. And Charlie, even yours seem to have a bit of personality in their facial expressions and stuff that I've seen. And I know with mine, when with these guys, when I start putting on the horns, I've had ones that I have tried so hard to make the horns even and have them not cross like these are. And I've sewn on the same horn 4 times and it still winds up in the exact same place. And I'm just like, okay, that's where the dragon wants its horn. So there it is.
Yep. And that happens with writing a lot too, where you're writing a character and the character just decides, this is my personality. And you're like, okay, let's go with it. It was fun doing audiobooks because I got to see the personality come to life in a voice. And my narrator did my dragons really well. He did this deep, gravelly voice that
awesome.
That's excellent.
He added a little reverb to it, so it like resonates in your chest when you're listening to it, and it was fun to hear his personality come out that way too.
That's wonderful.
Oh, that is awesome. Yeah. Okay. To breathe fire or not to breathe fire, and if not, then what becomes the dragon's deadliest weapon?
I always have to have some sort of magical tie, usually with my dragons. It can be explained by science, obviously. You can go either way. But fire breathing is a very, for me, integral part of what makes a dragon. It's part of that power. I mean, they're intimidating in themselves. They're large, scaly, lots of claws and teeth and horns. But when you add that fire breathing, it really, really brings them to life and makes them something that you really, really don't want to cross and you want to stay on their good side.
I recently watched How to Train Your Dragon again, and I remember Hiccup going through the book, breathes scalding water at his victims.
Cauldron or
fire. Yeah, the one the drum one that with a loud noise explodes your head.
Yeah.
And each dragon has their own different little thing that they do. The one sets fire to itself. I enjoyed the variety and the inventiveness of the different types of dragons.
Yeah. All the diverse species.
What about you, Charlie?
I like diversity as well. My dragons, the first time I wrote about dragons, I wanted to make sure that they did breathe fire, so I worked really hard to make sure that the fire made sense because it's science fiction, so I wanted to be able to genetically engineer a dragon that could breathe fire and how that made sense and how it worked, the mechanics behind it. And then same with flight, I wanted to make sure that they had like a nanocrystalline bone structure and nanocrystalline wings that would allow them to do that. And so I like fire breathers, but I also do like the mythologies where they have lightning or ice or water or other elements that they can tap into.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, in one of my books, I have a scene where the dragons are hatching and it's described that one of the hatchlings got the hiccups and caught someone's sleeve on fire. And that was just kind of a little comic thing, but if dragons were real, I could see that happening,
Absolutely.
So I had a little fun with that.
And it ties to their it ties to their personality as well. It makes them seem like they're alive, and that's part of good writing. And that's just absolutely wonderful.
It's fun writing dragons. And I had to figure out how to do it so that I could still have characters with internal thoughts, but then when the dragon was speaking, you knew it was telepathic. And so I used apostrophes instead of full quotation marks for that speech, and that left the italics for writing internal thoughts that aren't shared with anyone. Kind of made it interesting to figure out how I was going to do that and be consistent with it. So, okay, does the dragon have a hoard? And if so, what does it hoard?
I have a lot of dragons that actually hoard knowledge. With my dragons, they tend to either hoard knowledge or creatures, usually, as in providing sanctuaries and other stuff like that. Gold is always
Protective
fun.
spirit.
Yes. The dragons in my mythos that I'm creating and my worlds that I'm currently building are always they're pretty much gods, honestly. So they're not usually about hoarding wealth unless it's for something like a wealth of valuable artifacts, ancient magical artifacts. If they're gold or not, it doesn't really matter. Scrolls, but for sure knowledge, and protecting knowledge so that it's not destroyed.
I like it. And what about you, Charlie? What do you feel about dragons and hordes?
I think it's a fun way to display dragons. I've seen a few that have played with the horde idea. I've seen some that have done knowledge. I saw a painting once of a dragon with glasses that was curled up on a whole bunch of books in a library, and that was his horde, and I liked that. But I've also seen it done where they hoarded anything of value. So they had like vintage toys still in the box, still in mint condition in the box, and unopened comic books and things like that. That things that have value that we don't normally think of a dragon hoarding, but these would hoard. And I've seen it done in a few television shows too, where they've had a dragon that hoarded things of value, so you could go to the dragon and exchange something of value for something of value that it might have that it's been holding on to for centuries, and so you could get a Pegasus egg by giving them the mint toy. It's still in the box or something like that, and I think that's a fun way to play with the horde.
That's absolutely wonderful.
That is. The dragons I write about don't have hordes, but they live with people and are an active member of the community, so to speak, as far as, they live a long time, so they retain knowledge for centuries, and they retain their ancestral knowledge too. So, yeah, in a way, that is hoarding knowledge. Okay. When did you first become interested in drawing, sculpting, or writing about dragons? You want to start, Kaitlund, on that one?
I can, yes. I honestly don't know. It's always been there. It's something that has been a part of me since I was very young. My mom told my doctor that when I was 2 that I was going to be an artist, and the doctor just laughed. And she obviously was quite right, and I haven't let go of it since. They've just always been something that has tied with me with dragons, especially after watching the Rankin Bass Hobbit, and just growing up watching that. It's always been my, Smaug is my number 1 dragon, basically.
What about you, Charlie?
I started reading science fiction and fantasy when I was about 8. I had an older brother that was a voracious reader, and he would just read books and be like, I think you'd like this one, and he'd toss it my way. And so I started reading books about dragons at a very young age. And I started drawing them probably in junior high school into high school. I wasn't very good. I was not an artist until the last about 5 years or so. I did okay drawings. I did pen and ink and pencil and charcoal, and they were okay, but they were never great until I picked up scalpels and started working with cardboard. And so I love dragons, and so I had to put them in my books. And so the very first cardboard creation that I did was the big dragon that I showed you, this one. So this
Awesome.
one was the very first time that I created one of these pieces, and it just clicked, and I was like, okay, I'm going to be doing this from now on. So
For me, I've been interested in dragons for a very, very long time, and I was actually born in the Chinese Year of the Dragon. And I'm also an Aries, so I guess I'm a double fire sign in a way. But yeah, I've been interested in dragons for a long time, and I used to draw dragons, and I've got one on my wall that's covered up behind me that I did in high school. And I remember reading Tolkien in high school and junior high, and finished Lord of the Rings in a week over Christmas vacation. But when I started writing, there had to be dragons. There had to be dragons in it, and the dragons by Anne McCaffrey, her Dragon Riders of Perrin really inspired me. And so that's where I draw some inspiration for my writing from, is her dragons and their personality, their integral part of their society, that kind of thing. So
Wonderful.
well, it looks like we have about 20 minutes. Let's see. What makes your dragons unique to you is the last question I have. Do you want to start, Charlie?
Yeah.
sure. Mine are unique to me because they are cardboard and paper. I don't know anybody else who's doing anything like that. There's a couple other artists out there that work with cardboard, but for the most part, they do machines that are really beautiful and intricate and interesting, but not very many that do characters, things that are alive and real. And so the fact that I do dragons and dinosaurs and working on a triceratops right now. And so
Awesome.
I'm always kind of pushing the limits and seeing what I can do with the cardboard and paper.
It's an interesting medium to work with.
It's absolutely wonderful. And I like that I like that you took a little bit to get to it. It shows other potential artists that it takes some time to find your calling and what really, really you like and have a knack for. For me, I always knew it was dragons, but I never, pinning down the exact art style for my dragons was very, very difficult. And I fought the D&D aspect type of dragons for a long time, trying to get my voice into my dragons. My voice was always there, but trying to make my work fit into a specific genre really wasn't working for me. So I begun really just kind of letting my artwork run wild, so to speak. I don't really go in with a plan for my work. And I think that really makes my pieces unique because it evolves throughout the creation of the process, or throughout the creation of the work. It's always changing and evolving. It's kind of like that little voice in your head, almost as if they are having their own personality and just kind of telling you, you know, let's go this way, or let's go that way, or make me not look so mean, type of thing. It's like, I don't really like the big, nasty looking dragons. They're fun to do every once in a while, but I much prefer having eyes that can look back at you into your soul.
Right, yeah. And with mine had to have that distinct personality. They have to be a character unto themselves. And with my little fabric dragons that I make, each one seems to have a distinct personality. I hand paint the eyes. It's sometimes interesting when people choose their own fabrics, and it's not something that I would necessarily think of in combination. And so that's been a little bit interesting, having that input and then running with it and having someone say, well, I want this fabric for the body and then this fabric for the contrast, and having to make that work. So I guess we'll open it up to questions now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys. So our first question comes from Cadence, who says, what are some of the more interesting ways you've seen dragons incorporated into the economics of a society? For example, a horse or an elephant-sized dragon used as a pack animal or for other types of manual labor.
One of my favorite... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think having a dragon as an accountant would be absolutely wonderful. They are very detail-oriented, and definitely it would be a very good line of work for them, especially if you're going for more of the greed and hoarding, working at a bank or being an accountant.
With mine, and one of my stories, it's the creation of one of the cities. And the people, when they first arrive there, they are kind of led there by the dragon telepathically. And then the dragon helps them build this castle and helps with the heavy lifting and different things, of course. But also helped in creating a magical sword, and that could only be wielded by someone worthy of wielding it, and it was forged in dragon's fire. So that was some of what mine was, but also transportation is primarily getting long distances quickly, riding the dragons. What about you, Charlie?
I haven't seen any that really explore it to that extent, which is kind of sad. Like, it really is something that somebody should be doing, to explore a world that's populated by multiple types and sizes of dragons that are, some can be intelligent and some cannot, and just explore if they're used as pack animals, if they're used as transportation. Most of the books I see, dragons are either apart from the society, or they have a very specific small role that they play, like dragon riders, where they ride them and they use them for war and things like that. So it would be fun to explore a society based around dragon workforce.
I know that I have, in my anthology, it has all sorts of mythical creatures in it. So dragons obviously do have their part to play, but it's kind of like all of the mythical creatures, they have jobs. Like the unicorns will usually help with the fields, or they'll have satyrs helping with the fields. Everybody kind of has a job, no matter how small of a magical creature you are. But the dragons haven't really had their role completely fleshed out. So that definitely gives me some ideas to try to put that together.
Yeah, you could have like little gas lamp lighters, that just the little tiny dragons that live in the gas lamps that light the lights every night, and you could really explore fun little things where they have specific roles based on their size and their intelligence.
That's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so another question Matthew Minson asked, what are some good ways to make each dragon unique?
It's easy. Oh,
I know with mine, they're different colors in my books. So like there'll be a violet one with black stripes and blue one with red stripes, or just different colorations, and that's kind of what make mine different, but also the personalities, and they each have their own name and everything, of course. Go ahead, Kaitlund.
Actually want to hear Charlie's take on this, because each one is definitely unique.
I go with the organic versus mechanical is one of my big starting points. And so I like the big one, I did organic. So I did, it's a lot more lifelike than the other one, a lot more real. The legs aren't rounded as much as I'd like to, but I still went pretty organic with its structure. And then with this one, I definitely went mechanical. So it has rivets, and it has jet engine propulsion. It has 3 legs, which is a nod to the Japanese style of dragons, and also 2 airplanes. And then I play with adding and subtracting as I go. So a lot of them end up very unique just because of that. As I'm like, I rarely do a sketch. Sometimes I do a sketch beforehand, and then I just start cutting paper and cardboard. And so sometimes they end up surprising me. So like the one that I made that had the 4 wings, the 4 wings were a surprise, but also I did one of his horns ended up being a steam whistle with a little thread that went down into its head, and I wasn't really planning on that when I was doing the drawings, but it made sense with the shape and form, and so I embraced it. And so I just kind of play around and see where they take me as I go.
Absolutely wonderful. It's, for me, it's really easy, because like Charlie said, there's so many cool, fun little intricacies that you can put onto your dragons that can really make them stand apart from each other. I have either forward-facing horns or backward-facing horns, depending on if they're male or female. Some have frills, spines, spikes. Also, scale pattern is another way that I like to differentiate dragons and different characters. The sky's really almost the limit with dragons, including wing shape. But again, with Charlie and I's work, it's very visual, so it's very easy to differentiate different dragons. Colors, very fun, and that's also a wonderful way to do it, especially with fun stripes. And yeah.
I was thinking with my dragons that, originally the stripes were kind of more of a camouflage sort of thing, how, like tigers have stripes to kind of camouflage. And so that's kind of where that came from. But it, of course, eventually they become the apex predator. And they don't need to hide that much. So, yeah, that's where I was going with the stripes on my dragons when I first started writing.
Okay. Edge Dancer 07 asks, what positions would you put the dragons in to show specific personalities, and how would you draw the eyes?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the first part of the question?
Yes. What positions would you put the dragons in to show specific personalities?
So for me, definitely leader versus a follower. You definitely have to be a specific type of character and a specific personality to be a leader. Versus, like, say, a medic or someone who helps with caring for people, showing a very caring personality, tending to livestock or animals, stuff like that. Things that you wouldn't really think of a dragon being able to do, but putting their personality into their work and what they do in the illustration and also in writing.
Yeah, I know with my dragons, of course, the queen dragon is going to be the leader, but she's going to have a very more serious personality. She's going to hold her head a bit higher and everything than the other dragons, and the other dragons are going to hold their heads a little lower than hers to show submission to her as their leader. It just kind of depends on the circumstance. The one dragon, his name is Haskell, and I can see him just peering around the edge of his cave, waiting for someone to come and to, just kind of a trickster, a jokester in a way, but yet at the same time very grandfatherly and caring. And so, yeah, that's an interesting question. What about you, Charlie?
There's really a million ways you can position your dragons. You can have one curled up in front of the fireplace on a rug. You can have one standing on top of a mountain shooting lightning into the sky, and everything in between. So it really just depends on your dragon's personality, what you want to portray, and then making it a reality. There are, like she said, you can have their heads bowed to show submission, to show passiveness, have their mouths closed instead of open with all their teeth bared. There's all sorts of different ways you can show their personality.
Going back to the second part of that question, now that everybody's had a chance to respond, I like to use dog eyes, especially for showing expression. Dogs are so expressive, and they're also predators. So they're going to have forward-facing eyes, just like a dragon, and that is what I like to use, especially whippets or greyhounds.
It would be interesting to explore other animals like whales and...
Oh, yeah, I do. It's a lot of fun. But
whales and cows and some of the more submissive animals for some of the more submissive type dragons.
With my cloth dragons,
can't get more personality than a dog, really, though.
True.
Yeah. With my stuffies, I started buying clear eyes that have the slit pupil, and then I hand paint them. I have to think in reverse of what do I put down the outside layer first, because that's what you're going to see, and then colors behind it. And I've done sparkly eyes, I've done glittery eyes, I've done tie-dye eyes, just different ones. But I like being able to do hand paint the eyes, and they tend to be expressive and give the stuffed dragons a lot of personality with the eyes and what they're looking like.
Okay. So Wolf Song, kind of following up with a previous question, says, how would you go about incorporating dragons into some more everyday aspects of society?
We covered that pretty good. I'm trying to think of anything else that we'd have to add to that.
Put one in a suit and tie and have it working on Wall Street.
I like the idea of healer dragons myself. I mean, with all that knowledge, I mean, they would have been around when, if they were like in this time and age, they would have been around with all of those really cool cultures. Like they would have been able to read the Library of Alexandria. Gosh, I think I said that right. But they would have been able to read all of those novels that are no longer available and have that knowledge. And we wouldn't have lost all of that. We wouldn't have lost medical knowledge as soon as like a civilization was wiped out and when the books were burned.
Yeah. You could put one in a stethoscope, like lab coat and stethoscope, and it would be a fun art project to put a whole bunch of dragons in people clothes and place them in society.
Okay, awesome. So John Boy 532 asks, what is the most interesting dragon you've ever seen? We all know the whole European giant lizard with 4 legs and bat wings, as well as the more snake-like Asian variants, but what about dragons that are undead or have wings made of fire, that look like they're made of stone and are the size of the mountain, or so on?
Well, I know with my stuffed dragons, the lady from Australia specifically requested dragonfly-like wings, and then that it had emerald crystals for horns and claws and stuff. And it was a really interesting one to do. Really unexpected. It was cool.
I'm drawing a blank right now. I can't think of anything that really kind of stuck with me other than the myriad of dragons that they had in How to Train Your Dragon. Like, if really they kind of have everything in that one. Especially I liked the thunder drum. That one was really nice.
Yeah, that one. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up. So you can find me at vjogardner.com. I'm also on Facebook under vjogardner. Kaitlund, what about you?
You can find me at KaitlundZupanic.com. Also, under my new project name, DrawnToDragons.com. We'll also link you to my website. I know my name is a little bit hard to spell, so just DrawnToDragons.com. And thank you for having me. This is nice to have an online convention again.
And Charlie?
And my name's Charlie Pulsipher. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram mainly. And I do have a website. It's under construction at the moment, but and then my books are on Amazon in print, ebook, and audiobook.